Welcome, everybody. We're with Melanie from Chapters for a second session this week. So welcome, Melanie.
Thank you. Great to be back.
So following our last session, we had quite an influx of questions from our followers about the outdoors. So I'm quite excited to get into that. But before we do, would you mind introducing yourself?
As I mentioned on our last videos, so Chapters, there's three divisions to us. It's called Chapters International. We've got Chapters Projects, which is when we do actual interior design or interior decor projects. We do Chapters Sourcing, so we've got an international arm based in China at the moment, and we do sourcing and imports specifically for the design and decorating industry. And then the part that's relevant to this chat we're having today is what we call the Chapters Academy. So we do an enormous amount of design and decorating, what we call vocational or skills development training in the industry for the likes of yourselves, Italtile. So we're currently running B2B training for the Italtile group, where we tailor make our training courses for staff to gear them up to better serve your clients. And we also run B2C training, which is our more public courses. And that's anybody who is in the industry who wants to brush up, needs a refresher. We were just chatting about refreshers. Anybody who's got some form of interest or passion for design, I can guarantee you we've got an online course for them as well.
So I wanted to find out if your courses are for people that are in the design, interior design, architecture industry only, or is it available to absolutely anyone with any interest in the industry?
So our B2B training is very specific to suppliers or market leaders in the design industry. And those programs are written very much for those particular companies. We incorporate a lot of their products into the training. We have very specific objectives that we've defined with the client. When it comes to B2C training, so much more our public training, it's really for anybody. And the way that, if you go and have a look on our website, we actually recommend how the program works and develops over time for people who are new. They're considering a change in career, and it's amazing how many people consider a change in career, particularly around November, December for some reason, or even to much more advanced modules, which either people who are in decorating or design, it's a skill that they feel they're lacking. So looking at walls and wall coverings, for example, or even down to architects. So often architects will be highly skilled in one area, but need a little brush up in something else. So, for example, working with textiles and fabrics. You know, the science and technology around textiles and fabrics is changing all the time. So this is the opportunity to brush up on those sorts of skills. So there's definitely a course for all levels of interest or skill in our consumer training.
Okay, and then I know, as you've done previously, you're offering quite a nice discounts through to our followers, our consumers as well. Do you want to touch base on that?
Okay, so for all Italtile social media followers, we're offering them a 20% discount on our current course pricing. And all they have to do is get in touch with you at Italtile or myself, and I'll give you my contact details now. And they have to quote the code Italtile_0147. I repeat it, Italtile_0147. And that will qualify them for that 20% discount, either on a single course or a bundle of courses, whichever way they want to go. And for more information on the courses and our contact details, they can go and have a look at our website, www.chaptersinteriors, all one word, .com, and there's a lot more detail on there about the different courses, and that'll take you through to our training platform as well.
So just moving on to some of the questions, and we got quite a few questions from our card from Facebook. So I think the followers are getting value out of these sessions, which we appreciate. So if we can just get on with that, and then you can assist us on those questions.
Perfect.
Okay, so the first one is just before lockdown, we went to a fabulous retreat and fell in love with the outdoor shower. It was all natural wood and local stone, but we did notice that the wood was quite worn. How can we recreate that rustic look in a low maintenance way?
There's definitely ways to do it. You know, South Africa, or the Southern Hemisphere, particularly South Africa, we have exceptionally high, if not one of the highest levels of UV rays. around the globe. It's much lower in the northern hemisphere. And what UV rays do, other than give us sunburn and what causes cancer, is they actually eat away that anything that has got some form of natural product in it. So, for example, your wood, which is naturally prone to wear over time, it's softer, is going to wear much quicker versus something like stone cladding. So the more you can incorporate a hardier surface or finish that replicates that natural feel, the more longevity you're going to get out of it. So, for example, outdoor showers really lend themselves to that natural kind of feel. That's the point why you have an outdoor shower. It's the connection to nature and the open air and the freshness. And you don't need tons of bells and whistles to make a stunning outdoor shower. You just have to keep it really sort of natural and rustic. And you can achieve that with your wood look tiles. So, and I know Italtile's got a great range. Your wood look tiles, I mean, you've got anywhere from your very traditional, almost yellow browns, all the way through to your darker browns, and then into your more contemporary grays. So any of those are going to work really beautifully instead of wood in an outdoor environment. Just remember to use a product that's been designed for an outdoor environment or a degree of moisture for safety, particularly if you're going to put it on the floor. Any of your cladding or stone products are going to go really well in there. And it really comes down to the user on whether you want to, for example, seal cladding. You know, cladding, if it's not sealed, it'll be a little bit porous. It might develop some moss in it. That might be part of the look you're going for. If you want something that doesn't have that look, it's very easy to seal a stone product. And there's a couple of other things that, you know, that's just talking about stone and the wood look, which are two of the really big natural products that would appear in a outdoor shower. But there's other ways to give you that lovely natural feel. So incorporating some greenery. And it could be in the form of, because it's outdoors, it has access to enough light and to drainage. You could plant flowers up, you can plant ferns or a bed in that environment. If you don't have that luxury, incorporate some pot plants. They work really, really well in wet environments, and they'll add to that kind of outdoor natural feeling. I wouldn't steer away necessarily from a little bit of pattern or a little bit of something that catches your eye. So, I mean, if you refer back to our last chat we did when we were talking a lot about trends.
Yes.
You know, the trends at the moment is pattern is very in. Geometric is very in. Focal points is very in. 3D surfaces are very in. So use a beautiful patterned tile like a New Deco patchwood porcelain or something like that, that's incorporated into those natural elements and bring a little bit of quirkiness or personality or your own personal style to those kind of environments. Interiors, we tend to sort of stick to a look or a theme. Because this is slightly removed from everything else, it gives you the opportunity to be a little bit bolder and braver. So we've spoken about it before, about the trend around mixed metals. Mix up your metals in a shower environment. So you could have some black taps or bronze taps or a mixture of the two. You know, really, really express your personality in those sorts of spaces.
Okay, our next question. I've been spending this lockdown glued to Pinterest and discovered a garden labyrinth. I'd love to create a small version for myself, a place I can meditate and do yoga. Any advice on materials that can be used in this space?
Love this question. So garden labyrinths are, you know, they came out of sort of the same era as mazes. And the thing with garden labyrinths is they're deceptive in their size. So they don't need to be 30 meters in diameter in order to be effective. You can actually do some quite nice small-scale ones for something like a yoga retreat. I actually looked up the true definition of a labyrinth, and I'm going to read it to you. A labyrinth is an ancient symbol that relates to wholeness, and isn't that so appropriate at the moment? Combine the imagery of the circle and the spiral into a meandering but purposeful path representing a journey to our own center and back out again to the world. That description really tells you what sort of products you should be using in those sorts of spaces.
You could also incorporate, we have stone mosaics that you could actually cut the actual mosaic sheeting up and create your own shapes with the cut up stones, the cut up mosaic pieces. Okay, our next question is, my husband and I are mad about the Mediterranean culture and we would love to have our own shaded patio near the pool. But where do we start and what materials do we use?
So again, well, this is one of my favorite topics. So all the different architectural styles and their characteristics is one of my favorite topics to talk about and teach, because they're so interwoven with each other and they so influence each other. Because interestingly, Mediterranean architecture or design came about in the 1920s. And it came about from the very wealthy set when they started doing a lot of seaside resort vacations.
Correct.
And interestingly, Mediterranean architecture and style tends to either lead towards Spanish or Italian. So depending on what you're looking for and what type of Mediterranean feeling you'll go for one way or the other. That said, there's some overarching characteristics to Mediterranean architecture. So it's very sprawling. Often when you see Mediterranean architecture, it's very sort of no more than 2 floors, not even the whole building, and it's spread out over quite a large space. There's lots of symmetry. There's stucco, which is a certain type of plastering or paint technique. They've got very low-pitched tile roofs, arched windows and doorways, wrought iron balconies and window grills, generally quite a rectangular floor space. So if they're going to be doing this in their own garden, South Africans, we're very prone to going the natural route. You don't want to do something like a thatch roof. You're wanting to do something like a Spanish tile or something a little bit more Mediterranean on your roof. Keep your structure simple, keep it flat with a rectangular floor plan. And I would construct it in such a way that it had those arches, not closed with windows, but just arches to replicate those characteristics, but that allows you with that airflow and the fresh air to come in. And for me, an absolute must in this type of structure would be a pattern. So a patterned tile, either on the floor, in a backsplash, in a focal point around the fireplace, but definitely a more Mediterranean type pattern tile. And I would choose something in your much warmer colors, so your yellows and your terracottas and your burnt oranges. And I know Italtile's got a great range of pattern tiles, specifically as I'm describing, that will work really well in this. Also, Mediterranean lifestyles are very outdoorsish. So you need some good quality, comfortable outdoor furniture and a bar and a kitchen area, because Mediterranean lifestyle is very much about socializing, cooking, eating, drinking, enjoying all the good things in life.
I just wanted to touch quickly, and it's not in one of our questions, but you did bring up Terra Cotta, and I know we had a lot of queries, especially from the media, and we've almost seen that this trend is almost surfacing again on the Terra Cotta. What do you see from your side?
Terra Cotta it's been doing an up and up over the last couple of years, and interestingly enough, every time I do the training with the Italtile guys, I say to them, how often do your staff ask you for how often do your clients ask you for a terracotta tile? And without fail, they always say, we always get it as a question. So when people in our age group talk about terracotta, we remember those sort of small 20 by 20 terracotta tiles that were used outdoors. The traditional terracotta tile that we know is definitely in demand. People still use it, and it would be great for a Mediterranean space. But terracotta is making an appearance in other ways as well. So in paint colors, wall colors, in pots, terracotta pots, but I'm talking very stylish, contemporary shaped pots, glassware. So decorative glassware is coming out in terracotta colors. It's coming through in fabrics, it's coming through in upholstery, it's coming through in almost every surface in interior spaces. So it's more about the color coming back and the color having an impact versus the actual material itself. But definitely it's very, very popular. And a lot of the global retailers, you'll see that a lot of their websites and their in-store displays have terracotta incorporated into them. So trends are funny things. So some trends will appear and they're around for 2 years and then they suddenly disappear, never to be seen again. Other trends tend to, like Terra Cotta is a really good example, they tend to come in and out of fashion. So they'll come in during the 70s and then they'll go out 80s, they'll reappear at the beginning of the 90s and they'll disappear at the end of that decade and then they'll reappear in the noughties at some stage. Those trends generally tend to be tend to have legs, and they tend to appear in all parts of society. So you'll see them in fashion as well as interior and architecture. That said, when trends reappear, so long-lasting trends, when they appear, they tend to come back in different iterations of their previous life. And Terra Cotta, again, it started off as the 20 by 20 tile, mostly outdoors or in those types of interior environments. And it's now becoming really popular as a paint color or a glass color or an accessory color. So the color is still around. It's just coming back in a different form. So Terra Cotta, I think, will be here at least another year or two. It'll probably fade out of fashion for a little bit, but then I'm pretty sure it'll be back.
Then our next question is, and it's quite a short one, but I'm sure there's a long answer to it, is what is the best materials to use for a fire pit?
So fire pits, there's two types that you get. You get built-in ones, and then you also get your freestanding ones, sort of almost like a wok shape or a wrought iron type of crafted shape. So two things, your external one, the one that is not built into the ground, those, depending on where you live, those can be prone to a little bit of rusting. So you need a metal that has a high melting point, generally stainless steel, corrosion and stain resistant. Also, those, because of the high heat that builds up into them, they do need to be lifted off the ground. So you generally need to put them on a stand and make sure they're not close to plants or grass because they'll die. Yes. The most durable metal version of an external fire pit you can get is probably something like a powder-coated steel, and that'll ensure it lasts a long time. For a fire pit that's built into the ground, you need a lot more prep work in it. So you need to lay a little bit of a foundation. You need to consider where it is in relation to overhanging trees, whether you're going to be building seating in around it. I would get a professional in to do this because your inner wall of your fire pit needs to be made of fireproof building materials. So something like fire brick. So fire brick is not particularly attractive, but then you can clad your outer walls in something that's heat resistant, doesn't have to be fireproof, but it can be traditional brick, stone, masonry blocks, concrete pavers, or even something like an outdoor tile that is heat resistant.
So we've downsized to a place with the tiniest paved yard. It just fits tables and chairs, but we miss our garden. Any suggestions? So
people tend to be a little bit anti-small gardens, and if you get the recipe right, they can actually be as satisfying, if not more, as a big garden. So there's a couple of tips and tricks to it. So remember, in a small garden space, you actually have 5 surfaces, not just one. You know, you've got your horizontal level, your grass or your ground level, and you've also got 4 walls around it. And use those walls. Those are vertical planes for you to be able to use. So you can do hanging gardens, you can do creepers, you can do raised pots against those walls, you can do those beautiful green architecturally landscaped walls, which will definitely give you more of a freedom, a sense of greenness around you. The other way to not make a small yard or garden feel one-dimensional is to create different levels. So creating different levels defines spaces. So one level would be a seating space, the next level would be the fire pit space, and the next level might be your vegetable garden or where your beautiful floral pots are. And the key to the different levels is define your set of materials. So let's say it's an outdoor wood look tile or an outdoor cement look tile, and give each level a different finish to it, because it really does help define those spaces. So also with small gardens, don't be afraid of having a container garden. So beautiful pots of all different sizes and styles. One of the great things about container gardens is their flexibility. So depending on how the seasons change and how the sun moves, I can move those pots around so the plants are having the best benefit. And I can also move them around to create different looks. Try and include your seating maybe into your actual surface structures. So for example, your retaining walls, your walkways, parts of the landscape architecture that'll help stop you putting additional furniture in there, which might make it feel a little bit crowded. So be a little bit architectural about thinking about using the space versus it just needs to have some plots in it. And then finally, it's one of the things I teach your guys as well, is even though the space might be smaller, always try and have a focal point or a feature wall. And that can be created by putting patterned tiles in, for example, or putting your stone cladding in, for example, to create a bit of texture, maybe a water feature. Because what that does is it draws your eye to one point in that space and it prevents the rest of the space feeling cluttered.
Okay, Melanie, that's all we've got for today. So thank you so much for assisting us again. I know that we'll have a few more questions in a couple of weeks, and I know that you're always willing to help and assist. So thank you from our side. Okay, so just to finish off, we just want to recap on the discount. So you're offering for the online courses a 20% discount with the code, if you can repeat it, to the guys that want to apply for the courses, and they can either contact us at Italtile or directly through Chapters.
So contact us either via www.chaptersinteriors.com, or alternatively, our email address is info@chaptersinteriors.com, or contact Italtile and they'll pass your details on to us. And the code that you need to use when you log into the website is Italtile_0147.
Melanie, thank you so much again. Always been amazing, and we'll catch up with you in a few weeks.
Perfect. Thank you so much.